imagining legal evil to be good. There are literally millions of examples that could be used to demonstrate how the perception of the general public is dramatically affected by the belief in authority. Just consider how the average person views and judges an act when it is committed by one claiming to be authority, as opposed to how he views and judges the same act when it is committed by anyone else. Here are a few examples. 1. Scenario A. An American soldier in a foreign country is going house to house, kicking in doors, carrying a machine gun, and pointing it at complete strangers, ordering them around and interrogating them while searching for insurgents. Scenario B. An average American citizen in his own country is going house to house, kicking in doors, carrying a machine gun, and pointing it at complete strangers, ordering them around and interrogating them while searching for people he doesn't like. The first is viewed by most people to be a brave and noble soldier serving his country, while the latter is viewed as a horribly dangerous, probably mentally disturbed individual who should be disarmed and subdued at all costs. Number 2. Scenario A. An officer of the law is manning a sobriety checkpoint or a border checkpoint, stopping everyone to ask if they're in the country legally or if they have been drinking, or to otherwise see if any indication or evidence of criminal activity can be found. Scenario B. A man with a badge is stopping every car that drives down his street, asking every driver if he is an American, asking whether he has been drinking, and looking into his car for anything that appears suspicious. The cop who engages in such intrusive, obnoxious harassment, detainment, interrogation, and searching is viewed by many as a brave law enforcer doing his job, while anyone else behaving that way would be viewed as psychotic and dangerous. Number 3. Scenario A. A Child Protective Services worker receives a case file and, based upon an anonymous tip, shows up at a house to question the homeowners with the stated purpose of deciding whether they are fit parents or whether the state should forcibly take their child away from them. Scenario B. An average person, based upon a rumor he heard from a stranger, shows up at the home of other strangers asking them questions and threatening to take their children away from them if the questioner is not satisfied with the answers. Again, the government worker is imagined to just be doing his job, while the average individual who does the same thing is seen as a dangerous, probably mentally unstable person. This is not to say that there could never be a situation in which a child should be taken away from his parents for the child's own protection, but such matters would be taken extremely seriously by any individual who had taken personal responsibility for his actions. A bureaucrat who is merely acting as a cog in the machine of government, on the other hand, will do such things with far less hesitation and less justification because he will imagine that something called the law is solely responsible for whatever he does. Number 4. Scenario A. A pilot in the United States Air Force has been given orders to fly to the proper coordinates and deliver his payload to the intended target. The result is that some mercenaries of a different authority are killed, along with a number of other civilians who happen to be in that area. Scenario B. An American citizen acting on his own loads up a plane with some homemade explosives, flies over a building in the city where a vicious street gang is known to reside, and drops the ordnance. The result is that several gang members are killed, as are a dozen innocent bystanders who happen to be passing by on the street. The average American views the civilian casualties from the first scenario as unfortunate, but chalks them up to the hazards of war. The military pilot is viewed as a brave hero for having served his country and is given a medal. In the latter scenario, however, the average American views the pilot as a lunatic, a terrorist, and a murderer, and demands that he be put in prison for the rest of his life. Whether an act has been formally declared legal by politicians and whether it is being done at the behest of authority has a huge impact on the perceived morality and legitimacy of the act. In a very real sense, Those who do the bidding of authority are not even regarded as people, in that their behaviors and actions are judged by such a dramatically different standard from those of average human beings. As another example, a lot of people would be alarmed at the report of a man with a gun in their neighborhood unless they heard that the man also had a badge. People judge behavior based largely upon whether such behavior has been authorized or forbidden by authority, rather than whether the behavior was inherently legitimate. When citizens are called into an authoritarian court to serve as jurors in a criminal trial, for example, it is routine for the judge to tell the jury that they are not to concern themselves with whether the accused did anything wrong. They are to decide only whether or not his actions were in accordance with whatever the judge declares the law to be. Of course, those in positions of power over the years deliberately and methodically worn away at any old tradition known as jury nullification, whereby a jury could, in essence, overturn what they viewed as a bad law by returning a verdict of not guilty, even if they believed the accused had actually broken the law. Every jury still has that power, but authoritarian judges do everything they can to keep jurors from realizing it. Even when not on a jury, most people still judge others through authoritarian colored glasses, judging the goodness of another based heavily upon whether he obeys the commands of politicians, i.e., whether he is a law abiding taxpayer. Compare how the average citizen would view two individuals described below. Individual A. A has no driver's license, works under the table to avoid paying taxes, never registered for selective services, owns an unregistered, unlicensed firearm, occasionally smokes pot, sometimes gambles illegally, and lives in a cabin which he owns, but for which he has no occupancy permit, and which he has a deck on the back that he built without first getting a building permit. Individual B has a driver's license, pays taxes on what he earns, registers for the drafts, owns a registered firearm, occasionally drinks beer, sometimes plays the state lottery, and lives in a government inspected and approved house with a government inspected and approved deck out back. The two live otherwise similar lives, with both being productive and with neither robbing or assaulting anyone else. Their behaviors, choices, and lifestyles are very similar in almost every which way, except that there are laws against the action of individual A, but not against those of individual B. Let alone, that alone, without any other substantive difference, what they do or how they treat other people would cause a lot of people to view individual A with a degree of contempt while viewing individual B with respect and approval. In fact, if individual A was accosted, detained, and even physically assaulted, tasered, beaten, and handcuffed by law enforcers, even if he had never threatened or harmed anyone, many believers in government would opine that he had it coming, that he deserved to be attacked and caged for having disobeyed the commandments of politicians. This tendency of onlookers to blame the victims of authoritarian violence is incredibly strong. One who accepts the superstition of authority, the idea that some individuals have the right to forcibly dominate others, and that those others have the duty to comply, will assume that if authority is using violence against a person, it must be justified, and therefore, the victim of such violence must have done something wrong. This pattern shows up in different situations. When, for example, U.S. troops kill civilians in some foreign country, many Americans are desperate to believe, and therefore automatically assume without a shred of evidence, that the dead victims must have been insurgents or collaborators, or at least sympathizers with the enemy. As another example, when the Branch Davidians near Waco, Texas were subjugated to a military assault followed by prolonged physical and mental torture, followed by mass extermination, many Americans were quick to assume that anyone that government would do that to must have deserved it. The American tyrants fostered this attitude by fabricating various rumors and accusations in order to demonize the victims of that violent, fascistic assault on non-violent people. Actually, the incident was the result of a publicity stunt by the ATF based upon rumors that some people in the group possessed illegal gun parts. Many people assume that if someone was assaulted, prosecuted, or imprisoned by agents of authority, then that person must have done something wrong and must have deserved what was done to him. This assumption may come from a refusal of people to consider the possibility that the government they rely on for protection is actually an aggressor, or it may come from not wanting to consider the possibility that anyone, including himself, could be the next helpless victim of authoritarian violence, even if he has done nothing wrong. Regardless of the cause, the end result is that when evil is committed in the name of law, many spectators immediately hate the victims and rejoice at the pain and suffering that is inflicted upon them.